Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am your host, Chris Mitchell, and this is the Real Estate For You podcast brought to you by SellingNTX.com. On today's show, I want to talk about the importance of having home inspections during the option period. I've invited the owner and operator of CKA Home Inspections, Chris Amador. Chris, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Good. So first things first, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in the business?
Sure. All right. So I came out of a couple of different backgrounds. I had some sales experience, direct sales, right before I got into home inspection. Before that, I was running a veterinarian hospital.
Okay.
So I got people skills there. So I thought, you know what, let's capitalize on the people skills and the sales and see what we can do with me and my wife opening up a business. And that's kind of how we got the ball rolling.
Nice.
Yeah.
How did you settle on home inspections as the business that you wanted to open?
You know, I'm not the handiest person as far as building things and making things. So a lot of the things like food, I wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
Redoing garages, janitorial, those things are great professions. It's just not something that I was willing to do.
Right.
And we started looking at home inspection, and I noticed that, to get in was a certain amount and everything. But really what it was about was networking and creating your own leads and getting your own business started. And I felt very comfortable running a hospital and doing the direct sales right before I opened up my home inspection. That would be something that I would be able to do.
Good. Awesome. Well, I think, just from personal experience from working for you, I think you chose the right profession. So,
well, I appreciate
that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Definitely. What is a home inspection? We work with a lot of buyers and sellers, of course, but on the buying side, anytime we contract with a buyer, we refer them to a home inspector. So what is exactly a home inspection?
Sure. I'll nutshell it for you because everybody always asks me that. And really it is a function and system inspection. That's what it is. So break that down under the function part of it. So you're checking for functions of foundation, roof, attic, any kind of structure. Then you go on to the systems check and you're looking electrical, plumbing, HVAC, the appliances to make sure that they're all working correctly.
Okay. Why are home inspections necessary? And the reason I bring this question up is I have a lot of buyers who, bought and sold homes in the past, and they say they can come into a property and look at it and say, oh, it's a great property. Why home inspection? What's the reason for the home inspection on the buyer's side?
Yeah. And again, I get that question a lot. I also get that on the seller's side as well. And what I always liken it to, I don't think there's anybody out there that would just go find a car, new or used, and just buy it without driving it. Right. And you're driving because you're inspecting the house. Right. And you've driven for a long time. So you kind of have an idea of what the car should feel and sound like. People don't have that same experience in home inspections. They've lived in a house, but they've never really been inside of it and upside down and all around it to really see how it functions. Is it functioning correctly? Are all the parts working correctly?
Right.
How long does it look like these things are going to be functioning correctly? And should we make any adjustments now before it starts to fail in the future?
Okay.
And so it's basically, I go in there and look for things you would never even think to look for as just a buyer coming in to buy a property.
Can you talk a little bit about the different types of inspection? So, you've got the home inspection. I know there's what pool, septic, all those.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we have, really the bread and butter of most inspection companies are going to be residential and commercial.
Okay.
And anybody that's has been a home inspector for a while or really wants to make it their career and it's not just something that they're doing, they'll go ahead and go on and get several other licenses like pool and spa. You got termite license. You have septic and well license. And so all those things are going to be something that a home inspector to do the continuing education on top of the 32 hours continuing education that we have to have.
Yeah.
As any profession that you're in, and if you're into it, then you're going to try to continue to grow. And those are the different inspections that most inspectors that should have if they're really vested in being a top home.
Okay.
Inspector for.
So it sounds like for each type of inspection, there's maybe a certificate or a license that you need.
Right, and all of them have qualifications to keep. Besides just give me my money, give us our money, and then you get your license. You still have continuing education inside of a lot of those as well.
Okay, what type of certificates or licenses do you hold?
I hold. Okay, so for a home inspector, if they're actually a home inspector, they have to have a national and a Texas license that says that they're able to actually do home inspections. If they don't have that license, then it's not a true home inspection. And actually, there's a prosecution part of that if you're doing it without a license. Roofers, foundations, those guys aren't regulated. Home inspectors, realtors, we're all licensed by TREC, and so everybody's under that same umbrella.
Do you run across a lot of quote unquote home inspectors who aren't licensed, who are actually inspecting?
I haven't ran across that. That was brought up in class, when we were there. I haven't ran across it personally.
Good.
That's good. You want to keep the name, home inspecting on the top shelf and not have some things go wrong that brings it down. But, me personally, I'm not certified. So that's the National Association of Wastewater Technicians. So that's septic and well.
Okay.
And I'm termite licensed as well. And I have 2 pool and spa certificates. Like I said, if you're into it, you're going to get as many as you can. So I went through AHIT and RETS to get my pool and spa.
So you're essentially kind of a one-stop shop. They can call you, and if they have a septic, a pool, everything, you can take care of all of it.
Right. And it's a convenience factor for the customer, the realtor, and everybody involved in the transaction, and a lot of us do the same day reports. I get mine out the same day, and because I've seen a lot of things in the past couple of years that seem to think that the home inspector thinks that he's the part of the cog that's the important part, which it's a very important part of the whole deal. But it's just the process that needs to be through,
Right.
So you call us, we come out the next day, the following day, and then we get your report back to you. So that's kind of the direction that we've tried to go to since we first started. It's a convenience factor for you guys. All of us take our job serious, and every inspector I've ran across, we all have our stories that we tell, but everybody seems to be, especially the network that I'm in with the inspectors that I talk to, we're all well vested into making sure we deliver the right product to the people.
What kind of a lead time do you need? So say, for instance, we go under contract today and there's, say, a 5 or 7 day option period. How quickly can you get out to a property? I'm pretty sure you probably get booked.
Yeah, we 24 to 48 hours is tops.
Okay.
I have a couple of guys that help us out, so it's not I have realtors even telling me 3 days. They're starting to do 3 days so they could get the house, and knowing that we would be out there in the next day or two and have the report that night. So it's a convenience factor again.
I tell you what, it's really important, especially in those competitive offer situations, to be able to use that option period, to know that your inspectors can make it out there during that option time. So that way, from the seller's perspective, we're not dragging that option period out.
Sure. And again, that's part of the process of just being available, certified, responsive, communication, and deliver the product all within about a 28 hours, sometimes 48 hour if it's real busy. But other than that, it's within 72 hours that's too long for CKA Home Inspections.
And I noticed on your website, I've visited, quite a few times since I've had customers use you to inspect their homes. I like what you've done to your website as far as making it easy to schedule and to pay for the inspection. So kudos on that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. That was a work in progress. Let me tell you, those websites don't go up easy, man. They just don't.
No, they don't. Let's talk a little bit more about, let's just keep it with the general home inspection.
Sure.
So you mentioned earlier that it covers the systems. What systems does a typical home inspection cover, and what do you look for when you go out there and inspect a property?
Sure. All right. So basically, when I first step out of the vehicle, I get a broad overview of the house, take a look at it, and we do a foundation and a grading, and typically get on the roof and finish that all at one time. So we have a really good idea of what the outside of the house looks like.
Right.
And so if we can see if there might be some problems that might go inside.
Okay.
And so we note those on there. And so when we go back inside, we think about the things that we found on the outside, maybe on the roof. We check the attic on the interior, the interior walls where the issues might or might not have been, and go from there. So that's a quick outside view. Of course, we go outside 2 or 3 more times, but that's how you start it. Then we go inside and we'll go ahead and usually check the major appliances right in the kitchen, start in there. And then we'll go around and do the plumbing just to make sure all the plumbing's good. Then we start on the electrical panel. Then we go to the HVAC. And then we do the rest of the interior of the house.
Okay.
And if there's any oddball systems like septic or a pool, those are typically done last, because anything water related, I usually do last just so I don't get any water tracked into the house. So sprinkler systems and all those things are typically going to be the last thing ran. Okay.
The number of inspections you've been out on, I'm sure you've seen some things that make you kind of scratch your head. Tell me about maybe the weirdest thing that you've seen. And I follow you on Facebook, so I see the pictures you post of some of them. But tell me one that you think that's maybe the weirdest situation that you've run into?
I'll tell you a good one. So I was out at pretty far out in the country past Joshua. So we're getting out there where there's not a lot of rules and regulations out there. And I noticed that the kitchen, compared to the rest of the house, the plumbing was working fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, the sinks in the bathroom, they were a little bit slow to drain.
Right.
So I went to the kitchen thinking it was going to be a problem, and it drained right out. So I look underneath the cabinet and I noticed that the P-trap went down and then it went straight through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and turned the water on and went outside and looked at the other side of the wall, and the water was just running straight out of the wall right into the ground. So that was your drain.
So that was like old school plumbing.
Old school plumbing, man. There was nothing on the other, not a bucket. It was just right out there in the open.
They were just recycling their water.
They were
right?
recycling the water. I got a kick out of that one.
Yeah, I bet. So how did that look on the report? Did you?
I actually called for a plumber on that one.
Did you?
Sure.
Just to make sure what you were seeing was what
right,
you were seeing.
Right. Make sure I didn't miss some kind of code variation that I didn't know about or something.
Awesome. So when you go out and do an inspection, do the buyers attend those inspections with you?
There's two schools of thought on that.
Mm-hmm.
I like to teach, right? So I don't mind if people are there.
Right.
When you first start out, new inspectors, if you're watching this, try to get by yourself as much as possible throughout the first 25. I relate it to texting and driving when you first start.
Right.
Somebody's talking to you, it's hard to text.
Yeah.
So when you're doing your inspection, it's hard to do it when you first start. But as you go along, you want them there so you can tell them what you're seeing and they understand what they're seeing. And
mm-hmm.
when they get the report, there's no calls.
Yeah.
Because they've been there the whole time. And I really encourage new buyers to be at the inspection.
Okay.
First time buyers, I know they ask a lot of questions, but that's what an inspector is there for. See, it's not just here's my inspection and here's the report. It's about communicating what you're finding in that report and making it easy enough where everybody down the line understands exactly what you're saying, what you're looking at, what the diagnosis is, and how to fix it.
Right.
And that's if you can accomplish that within less than 25 pages, then I think that you're doing a good job as far as detailing what needs to be done.
Okay.
I think that's going to be the best way to do it, is have people there. I know a lot of people don't like that, and I understand that. But at bare minimal, if they can come to the last 30 minutes of inspection, then everybody's going to be on the same page, and there's no surprises, mm-hmm. And typically I'll do a follow-up with the realtor that hired us, or that was at least on the buying side.
Right. So
they kind of understand what's going on too.
Okay. I bet you get a lot of, especially first-time home buyers, who then when they see a report and it's not a clean report, there's some questions there and there's some hesitation on whether they should move forward or not.
That that you've hit that on the head right there, and that's why I encourage them to come out now. Mm-hmm. Is because, first of all, when you're talking to somebody that's never done anything, it's hard to explain what's wrong with it, and put that in perspective. Anytime somebody goes and buys a pre-owned house, they don't see everything on the walls, all the scratches, until about 2, 3, 4 months in. They start pointing at things and, I didn't notice that. The imperfections, the cosmetic stuff. And that's the easy stuff. So if I'm trying to break down an HVAC system or something wrong with the electrical panel and they're not there and they have no frame of knowledge of what I'm talking about, can you imagine trying to understand something like that?
A problem seem bigger than what it maybe actually is.
They have no frame of reference to categorize, that's a major problem, or that's really nothing. But if they're standing right beside me, I can explain it all the way down to, this is where we are, this is what I'm seeing, and this is where we're going to be at if correction isn't made. Make it easy for them. So yes, I don't mind them being there.
So in all the inspections that you've done, have you ever run across a house, including new builds, where the inspection was absolutely clean? There was nothing you can find on a property.
Unfortunately, I haven't found it.
Wait a minute, Chris. Even on new builds?
No, not on new builds either. I tell you, I did one for a lady in y'all's office actually, and it was right by TCU. Beautiful house, 750 plus, and I got up on the roof anyway. It was a new build, and they had actually forgot to put the cover for the bathroom vents. It was just a big hole in the roof, and the whole line was full of water in the attic hanging down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so,
that's not a call that you,
that was, that call was to the realtor. That needs to be fixed right now, because the only thing hanging on that, the bathroom vent to the ceiling was the mastic.
Wow.
So once that let go, that was going to go all over the ceiling and, brand new builds. So yeah, I've never found I've found a couple that are pretty close, but it's like anything else.
Exposed nail heads, things.
People are building
things.
them, right?
Yeah.
It's not a machine building them. It's people. So there's always going to be a variance of what somebody thinks is acceptable and what I might think is acceptable.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the hot items, especially you mentioned around TCU. There's not a lot of, well, I take it back, there is some new builds around TCU, but for the most part, a lot of those houses are older in and around TCU, around the Fort Worth area. So let's talk a little bit about the hot items. One thing that buyers of all experiences, one thing that they usually catch a hold of is, say, aluminum wiring. Is aluminum wiring bad? And if it is bad or if it isn't bad, what exactly does that mean? And what makes it bad versus what makes it okay?
Sure. All right. So basically, they still use aluminum wire coming into the main, top of the box or bottom box, depending on how you're getting your service line ran. Mm-hmm. So that's still acceptable. They only used branch aluminum, and that's running to your outlets and switches and light bulbs during the Vietnam War. That's the only time they did that, because they were using the copper for bullets.
Oh, okay.
So they ran out of copper, and they started using aluminum, right? So the problem with aluminum is doesn't conduct electricity as well as copper.
Okay.
So it gets hotter. Well, heat makes things expand, right? So if you're a homeowner and you have aluminum running through your house and you decide to switch out one of your wall outlets and you don't quite get that aluminum wire sealed correctly, it's going to expand and shrink as current's being used there, and it can cause a little spark once there's enough gap in it. A spark in a wall is the problem.
Right, okay.
Problem is when the end user goes and buys the actual outlets versus somebody in the profession, there's outlets that are labeled for both copper and aluminum. And if you grab that, you're going to be fine. But if you don't, there's going to be an issue. Right. That's when the sparking starts.
Okay.
So when I find them inside of the house, I notate them that aluminum has issues, and I suggest that an electrician comes around and checks to make sure the outlets are fine. At that point, the house is built at least in the late 60s, right at the early 70s, and we're in 2018. If there's no scorch marks in the box, there's no scorch marks around the outlets, and they're all correct, that's going to be a comfort level at that point. And it's not going to be so much of a safety level, because an inspector has asked an electrician to come out and look at it, and if the electrician says it's fine, that's where we're at on the house. Again, it becomes a comfort issue. Are you comfortable with that?
Okay.
So that's going to be the hot item. People at first, they just automatically just throw their arms up, and after we talk to them and get an electrician out there and get a second opinion, and a lot of times they're okay with it, and sometimes they're not.
I imagine that's one of those situations where it's better for the buyer to be there so you can kind of explain that in detail versus just saying, there's aluminum wire, you need an electrician out, because in their mind, they're probably thinking, wow, the house needs to be completely redone. The electrical needs to be completely redone. Yeah,
words are read way different than they are listened to.
Right.
And I've always believed that. I can tell you the same thing that you can read, and you comprehend it a little different.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the deal there.
What about foundation? So in Fort Worth, we have slab, we have pier and beam. Do you treat those differently when you go into an inspection? What are you looking for on each?
Well, on the foundation for the slab, it's pretty cut and dry, right? You walk around, if you see any big cracks on the foundation, there might be an issue through the house. There might not be. Doesn't mean one way or the other, but it's at least a starting point of something that needs to be looked at, and further investigated during the inspection process. And then a pier and beam, you look around the outside, but really the story's on the inside. It's because the inner wall mostly will have the corbelling on the inside, where you start to see the rebar exposed, and then you can look at the piers and the beams and kind of see if they're straight and if there's any kind of adjustments that need to be made. One foundation or the other, I don't mind checking either one of them. And as far as stability, it just really depends on where you're building.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it depends on where you're building around here, is if you're going to have foundation issues. And a cracked foundation doesn't mean it needs to be repaired.
Right.
It just means it's cracked.
Okay.
And that's kind of the way it goes. Not every crack can be fixed because it's just a crack of shrinkage, maybe a little settling. Doesn't mean there's movement.
Okay. And the big one, because I think this is the one where, living in Texas, the HVAC system is If you don't have that, you don't have a house, really.
Right.
It's, you can't live without it. What are some issues that you see with the HVAC that are, to a new buyer, may seem problematic, but in your eyes, it's a simple fix?
Sure. So a lot of times we'll be walking around, especially if they're with me, and you have your secondary drain, and it might have some evidence of previous water collection coming out from the pan upstairs. So, that's, as soon as they hear that, it becomes, oh, the AC doesn't work.
Right.
That's an automatic flag, because they always hear that, oh, the AC doesn't work. So I usually take them up in the attic, or at least let them peek their head up there. I don't really like them walking around if there's no decking up there,
Right.
but they can peek their head up there, and I'll kind of explain to them, this pipe goes to your sink, this pipe goes outside. We need to figure out why it collected water. Is the sink jammed up or anything like that? Mm-hmm. Break it down to, if they had to fix it, they would actually know what to do,
Right.
outside of adding Freon or taking apart the compressor or something major like that.
Yeah.
But simple fixes like that. A lot of times, believe it or not, it's the filters. They're so dirty. You can hear that thing screaming for air, you know, and a lot of that will have a major impact on flow. I mean, restrictions negative.
Yeah.
I know it keeps a lot of the pollen out of your nose, but it doesn't help that AC machine run correctly.
It's funny you mentioned the filters, because as a real estate agent, when I go into a house with a buyer, that's one thing I look at, is both the return vent and then the air vents themselves. If either one's dusty, okay, that's probably a indicative of maybe something else if they didn't take care.
Yeah, because once you blow past, then the A coil is grabbing it and it's trying to shoot it right back through the vents, and that's maintenance.
Right.
Doesn't mean there's a problem with the system. It's a problematic function of the system, is it's doing what it's supposed to do, but you didn't do what you were supposed to do. It collected all the dirt, but you're not exchanging it out to get some more dirt out of there. You're letting it pass through the system now.
Yeah.
And so that's an issue. Typically, if it doesn't work when I'm in the inspection, we'll try to figure out if it's the compressor or if it's the box or if there's some kind of Freon issue or something like that. As long as it comes on, it can usually be fixed relatively easy. Not always, but something that the buyer could look at doing, or I can explain to them, hey, they probably have a minor leak here. It needs to be sealed up. Have an HVAC come out and see if there's an issue or if it needs to be replaced or repaired or what they can do for it. In the middle of summer, it seems to be more impactful. When I'm trying to talk to somebody and they're wiping the sweat off their head and they're not really listening, but they're just thinking it's broke and it's not, I don't want this house, but most things can be fixed, man.
Okay.
I mean, they just can.
Good. So the big one here, lead-based paint. So that's on houses built pre-78. A lot of first-time home buyers or buyers that maybe aren't experienced with that see that as the one thing they can't deal with because they're not sure what it means. Tell us a little bit about what lead-based paint is, and is a house safe if it was built before 78?
Sure, and I'll even go one further than that. I'll go ahead and add asbestos into that, because that's always a big deal too. Right. Those two seem to be hand in hand, right? Because that's about when all that stuff changed and we weren't able to use those products in the house or a livable environment.
Yeah.
So basically, and usually it's disclosed, hey, there's lead-based paint here. There's got to be aware of that. And so first time when I talk to the buyers, I usually ask them, are you guys going to do any renovations? Are you going to knock down any walls? Are you going to add anything to this structure? And if they say no, I'll tell them that's great, because, as per the disclosure, you have lead-based paint in here. It's fine as long as you don't disturb it. You can keep painting on top of it. You can do whatever you want. Just don't sand it and don't break it out. Other than that, you're fine. I mean, it's covered. It's non-exposure at that point. It doesn't have like a radiant field of magnetic radiation that's flying out of lead everywhere. It doesn't work like that, right? So it's a contact type deal. It enters into you. So if you don't disturb it, you won't have a problem with it. And it's the same with asbestos. If it's on there, if it's on your pipes, leave it on there.
Right.
Don't mess with it. If you have to do anything that's going to disturb that, get the professional out to do it. Don't try to mess with that stuff yourself. Okay. Lead-based paint, asbestos. If you know your house has it, don't disturb it. You'll be okay. If you see any of it, that's exposure. That needs to be taken care of it. But if it's behind something, paint, a bunch of layers of duct tape, anything like that, you should be fine.
Okay. So good rule of thumb for both asbestos and lead-based paint. Don't disturb it. Don't sand it, and don't chew on the walls.
Don't chew on the walls. Don't hit them with a sledgehammer, anything like that, because once that demolition starts, you need to tint the house.
Good. All right.
So.
Well, that's good to know, because I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there who both on the side of being anti-lead based paint, that they probably need to hear that. It's fine if.
Right. And I've talked to several people and just gave them a little bit of education like that on the inspection, and they were fine with it, because they were real apprehensive. And that's the first thing that they talked to me about was, well, hey, are we okay with this? Has this? Well, sure, let's go in there and look at it. And we go from there and diagnose the house. And if it's an issue, it's an issue. If it's not, then it's not. Again, most of that stuff is comfort level, because in 2019, most of that stuff's been covered or removed.
Right.
So now you're penetrating something that you're doing that now. It's not just straight exposure. It's been caused to be exposure.
Okay. Well, Chris, that about wraps up the questions I have. Anything you want to let our folks out there know? Contact information, website, email, maybe?
Again, my name is Chris Amador. I'm with CKA Home Inspections. We are open 7 days a week, and we do inspections at 9 and 2 o'clock every day. My contact number is 817-437-2397. You can reach me by email at chris@ckahi.com or at my website, CKAHI.com.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to thank Chris for joining us today. If you like the show and you want to hear more, visit SellingNTX.com/podcast for a list of all our shows. And until next time, make today a great day.